Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, harmony. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not, O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. You may recognize that's the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. I grew up all over the South, mostly. You'll hear my accent come out when I get really fun. And my dad and I grew up in the military, so I was probably lived in 8 or 10 houses before I was like 18 years old. One of the first things my mother did when we moved into a house was put this prayer up in the foyer of the building, so of our house. So I've been looking and reading this prayer for as long as I can remember. The story of St. Francis is actually kind of interesting. He's actually a guy that I admire a lot because he was never ordained. He never went to school. He never became a ordained preacher or anything like that. Krishnamurti is another guy I really admired because he was interested in living out what the teachings of Jesus Christ were. That's all he was going to do. He was going to live it. He was the son of a silk merchant and a noblewoman, and he had been already in 2 wars by the time he was 24 years old. And he came to the ministry by being had done with the wealth trip and had done with the military, and decided that there has to be some other way of living. I'm not happy. So he started, like we all do when we're not happy, we start hanging out with street people. Street preachers. He started hanging out with the homeless and the street preachers in his hometown, and he found that there was a joy and a way of living there that he didn't find in his father's house or in the military. So he started his own like street preaching ministry, and it is said all he ever taught was to follow the teachings of Lord Jesus Christ and to walk in his footsteps. And that's kind of what I admire him most about. He was about putting it together in his own life and walking what it was for him to do. He lived his life. He wanted to be of service to his God, how he understood it. It wasn't for everybody. He didn't say that it was for everybody. He lived his life. He stood in his shoes, listened to God to do what he was having to do. And he is probably one of the most successful. Created the Poor Clares, which is the nunnery. Created the Order of St. Francis of Assisi, and the lower order, the minor friars, as they're called. But he's been most successful in the Order of St. Francis because that is for lay people. What the monasteries did in those times, in the 12th century, was a group of guys would get together. There were guys would get together. They'd pool the resources, then they'd go buy the land, and then they would all agree that they were going to live a certain way together. And this St. Francis group was so successful that the Pope wanted an audience with him to say, how is it that you're really turning out good people? You're really making an impact on your crowd it's in Turkey actually. So you're making a real big impact. So the Pope wanted to know how he was doing this, and all he did was say, I'm following and living like Christ is telling me to live. And so that's kind of why I entitled the talk, Participating with Our Peace. Because it's really easy, if you've been on retreat, we do retreats here at Unity, which I absolutely love, so when everything is taken care of for you, right? So it's like a transformative experience. You go away for 2 weeks, or maybe you go to Aruba, and you've taken all these details, you've planned it all out, and it's wonderful because you don't have to do anything but the thing you're supposed to do. Maybe have fun, maybe pray, maybe get up early, and I did yoga every day at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's transformative. It's transformative because we set aside that time and we're going to be disciplined about what we were going to do. And that's why, like, monasteries work, right? Because it's all taken care of. All the decisions are taken care of. When you get up, when you pray, when all of it. That's why they're successful. All of us can do that and create that kind of transformative experience in our own lives today if we get honest and a little bit disciplined about being who we are. It's not really about making sure you do yoga at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's about being in contact with our Christ mind, about being in contact with our Christ mind, about what it is that you're supposed to be doing in this moment. If you were in the monastery in the 12th century, they had something that they called a clock, and it was actually a book. The word clock comes from the experiences with this book. You could go to the clock and find out what you were supposed to be doing at every hour of the day, in every single hour of the day. So all those decisions about where you were going to be and were already taken for you, or those decisions were already made for you. But you can do this for yourself. You have an inner clock. God has written on your soul, written for you, written with you, what you should be doing all the time. And it's for your relationship to find out what that is. It's going to be different for everybody. I don't think we all need to be in monasteries and nunneries. I don't. That's one of the reasons why I resisted the call to be a teacher and a preacher, because I thought I had to look a certain way. My dad's a preacher. I thought I had to look and certainly act and be that kind of way, or maybe I had to shave my head, or maybe I had to wear orange all the time. I don't look good in orange. But that was my internal dialogue. I can't turn my will and my life over to the care of, God as I understand Him. What's going to happen to me? I'm going to turn into a different person. I'm going to, all these weird, I'm going to have to abide by and perform these acts that I have no real affinity for. Turns out that's not the case. What God was always asking me to do was to be myself. What God was always asking me to do was to show up and be present all the time. Because my hands are needed in the things that I'm going to be doing. Your hands, your life, your feet, everywhere you go, you are representing the presence of God. You have an incredible influence on everybody you see, everybody you meet, all the things that you do. And none of it is any more or less important than the rest of it. Do you know that? In Zen, they call that like chopping wood and carrying water. It's all that it's about. Participate with your peace. If, like in Unity, they tell us that the peace is always here. So, how can we access it? Well, you do that by having a relationship with God. There's a gentleman I admire, and when I first met him a couple of years ago, he had just gotten out of a mental institution. He had had a complete and utter full-out breakdown. Couldn't leave his house. The ambulance had to come get him. He was having major panic attacks. After about so I met him just after he'd gotten out of spending almost a year in a mental institution, because he was just absolutely lost it. Because he was trying to be somebody that he wasn't. He was trying to be the son that his mom and dad wanted him to be. Dropped out of college and all this, and he just wasn't that guy. But it took a complete mental breakdown for him to try something different. Well, I admire him because he really put his life he says, okay, I'm going to get better. He's now in like 10, 12-step programs. Do you know anybody like that? Just they're part of every single 12-step program. I admire this man a great deal because he has taught me to reach out. And he has taught me that sometimes people see me before I'm able to see me. Right? Sometimes some people, I've been loved. One of the things he says a lot, he goes, they loved me before I could love myself. So the community and who we are and what we do, this is what we do for each other. And he takes action every moment of every single day that's toward his, when he calls it my sobriety. And he opens almost every conversation we have is I'm sober today. Because he was miserable before that. Every single action that he takes every day is to make sure that he is not only sober, but he's getting better. He's constantly getting better. So I really, really admire him for that. Because he does what Jorge Ferrer, an integral philosopher, he interacts with the world in intrapersonal, interpersonal, and transpersonal ways. Embodied, interpersonal. He is embodied. He is present with what's going on with them. You know, like she was saying, I just don't feel good today. I'm still happy, but I'm not feeling good today. You know that because you're actually in your body. You're actually feeling what's going on. Some of us aren't. It's taken me a while to travel from my head, to the rest of me, because I like my head. I spend a lot of time in my head. We need to be embodied in order for this idea to happen. This interpersonal, my friend does this interpersonal really well. He interacts with relationships, with people. He has people in his life that he interacts with. And the transpersonal, he actually is having a relationship with God, what's beyond him, with the mystery. So think about the way we participate with the peace in our own bodies. Think about the ways in which we participate in the peace of a community, because we have a part in that. We have a responsibility there as well. But we also have a responsibility, and all these things are happening at the same time, intrapersonally. To have that relationship with God, to talk back, to start the conversation, to be in that conversation. The Bible says in one of many places, it says, pray unceasingly. Right, and over here says, prayer is the conscious contact with God. How often do you make that a conscious thought? I, for one, before any talk, before I go to, before I get on, I answer phones a lot. I do a lot of work on the phone at my job. But before I answer any phone call, I give the conversation to God. That's the very first Spirit speak through me. May I say only what's necessary for me to say, and may I have my ears and my mind open to what I need to listen to, so I can listen and respond appropriately. That's how I participate with my peace. I want to, I'm here to help a lot of folks. I help people get affordable care. I'm an affordable care. I teach the Affordable Care Act, and I manage the Affordable Care Act for Westchester County as a navigator. So I have to give good information, and I have to listen, which means I have to do all of these things. I need to be in my body and present to who's ever sitting in front of me having this insurance meltdown, and I go from meltdown to meltdown to meltdown all day long trying to help tell people out with these things. And I have to listen. I have to be in relationship with this person, and I have to be in relationship with God so that I know the right thing to say. It's very important to do this, and that's my talent. That's what I do. I do this as well. I love putting my little notes together here, telling you the story of St. Francis, because this is what my joy is. This is where my joy is. And I'm shaking a little bit because I'm nervous, because I really want you to like what I have to say. But that's all part of my experience. That's all part of what I'm doing in order to participate with my peace. I don't want to leave any of it out. I don't want to leave my relationship with you out. I don't want you not to know what's happening. We're all creating this idea of peace, our experience with it together. The Course in Miracles is a book I look at every day. And in chapter 26, there is a passage called the 12 Laws of Healing. And number 9 is the law of cause and effect. It's very simple. You could probably cross-stitch this on a pillow. It says cause and effect are one, and they're not separate. Now, I'm sure you hear there the idea of means and ends. If you think a little bit farther like me, you're just like, oh, well, that's cause and effect. That's karma, right? You think about what you reap, you sow. All of those things are in there, and that's also exactly what I'm talking about participating with your peace. I'm going to quote. There's a Buddhist master called Shinran, and he says, "Good deeds bring good results. Okay, bad deeds bring bad results. Your deeds bring your results." Okay, it's not good or bad, they're your results. It's what you're participating in, it's what you're sowing. It's what I'm sowing, it's what I'm doing. And he goes on, when we have a good destiny, we can accept this. But during a bad destiny, we cannot. That's when we believe others cause and others effect. I must be suffering because of what someone else has done, we think. We blame the judge and the jury for our crimes, but if this were true, we'd be receiving the effects of their ideas and not ours. Thoughts in your mind create what's going on. We are always constantly setting things into motion for ourselves, and we're reaping those we're reaping those benefits. Either we're participating in creating this idea of being on retreat and doing these things for our spiritual development, and we create a container for grace to descend, and we keep moving forward and ever expanding into the love and awareness that we are, or we're not. Sometimes we're not. The Hindus have done a lot of thinking about the idea of karma. Done a lot of thinking about the way this happens for us and about why things happen the way they happen. And there are 3 types of karma. I just love this. Parabadha karma is about one's body type and economic status, and it's essentially the setting for one's birth. It's called parabadha. Samchita karma is about one's likings and abilities and attitudes and inclinations. It's like your personality. But the third and the most important type of karma is called agami karma. It's the most important because it's the most powerful. Agami karma is the karma of the present life, over which the soul has complete control. Lord Krishna most famously summarized, one can transcend karma and be liberated. One is aided by the love of God. All the yogas of Hinduism seek to transcend karma through different means of realization. You can transcend your karma by the actions we take today. Actions, what we do and think about and manifest and walk through, and the decisions that we're making in the moment have way more power than the birth, the way the economic status and sex and stuff that you're born into, or your personality type, your likes and dislikes. Our actions that we take today have the greatest effect on our peace. We're always doing that. We're always making a decision about how we're going to act, about how we're going to react. And that's why I wanted to end with a quote from my favorite transcendentalist, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who called the law of cause and effect the law of laws. I want us to be clear about understanding what I'm talking about, this law of cause and effect, the way that we participate and are present with what is happening right now. And he says, cause and effect, means and ends, seeds and fruit cannot be severed, for the effect is already blooming in the cause. The end pre-exists in the means, the fruit in the seed. So remember what seeds we're planting, what fruits we want to harvest. and participate and take action on creating the atmosphere with your friends and in your body and in a relationship with God that actually creates that container that we love so much when we're on retreat. You can have that today if you're participating with your peace. Thank you.